Welcome to the Art of Conscious Living. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Jacqueline. She's the author of a book called I Am My Father's Ex-Daughter. I Am My Own Person. It's an incredible story of a teenager and a young child as she lived her life with a father and a family and other family members that, to say the least, was not the most ideal. There was a lot of dysfunction there, and what she went through in the court system to claim her own freedom. Jacqueline, thank you for sitting with me today and talking to me about your story. Mm-hmm. Your story is absolutely amazing story because it's happening to so many millions and millions of other children. The idea is that children are owned and they're basically told what to do, and they have to look up to the parents because they're an owned product, basically, like a product that is something that somebody owns. They really don't have their own idea of their voice and any say to their own life. So I like to look at that, and being that you came from an experience where it wasn't the most ideal situation, one of your parents, your father, he was having a lot of problems in his life, and he was in prison, and he had a lot of violence, and brought a lot of situations that young children should not experience. So I'd like to speak to you about what was that all about, and how did you experience that, and what were you thinking as that's going on? And let's go back to the very beginning. When you were a young child, you're now 15 years old.
Yeah.
So what was it like when you were let's say 5 years old, living in this kind of environment?
I think when I was 5, I wasn't aware yet that these things were, that they weren't proper, that, I didn't really have my own voice yet and my own thinking for myself. I just thought that I was supposed to do what my father was wanting, and I just thought that this was normal because this is the way that, as far back as I could remember, how things were going.
And how were things going at that time that you remember? He did have was it your mother, or was it a stepmother you had at that time?
He divorced my mom when I was 2 years old, but yeah.
Okay.
So we were, yeah. I don't remember any time, or I don't have any memories from when my mom and my dad were together.
Okay, so he was with a stepmother, another woman.
Yeah.
And that relationship, to say the least, was very violent, and a lot of chaos, and a lot of arguing, and a lot of fighting. What did it feel like, as you remember, from the age of 5 to 10? What did you feel like as this was going on around you?
I think that when there was not that much violence when I was younger, but there was many small incidents that occurred, and then it was when I was 8 years old where the big incident happened, and then I was just feeling like I just needed my mom, and I didn't want anyone else as a parent. I didn't want my dad as a parent, and that was when I kind of I felt that I just didn't want to have him as my father anymore, and I realized that he had never been a father to me.
So were you saying that to your mother and to your father at that time? You were asking not to see him at that time? Or?
No, I never spoke up for myself because I always had this voice inside me that would say things to me like, don't say this or say that. And I felt like I always had this fear inside me telling me what to do. So I never spoke out what I really thought.
So in essence, you became like the parent.
Yeah.
You became the parent to your father. And what was that experience like, of always thinking that you have to take and be accountable for when there's no accountability coming from him?
Sometimes I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I was so confused about what to do, And I just kept on listening to these voices and hoping that everything would end up all right. And there's always so many overwhelming responsibilities that I had to do at such a young age. I was just overwhelmed, but I don't think that any of those feelings really reached the surface of my conscious. So I feel like the sadness and depression kind of reached me later, but then I wasn't aware that I was so hurt. Yeah.
But you knew that something was not right. You felt,
Yeah.
How did you feel inside of yourself at that moment?
I would have feelings I would have feelings like, oh, my father, I feel scared of him. And then I'd be like, no, I don't. He's my father. So I would have I'd be like, no, I'm not allowed to think that. And then I would change it to something. I was like, what would my father want me to think right now? And then I would change what I was thinking. And, I was just living the way I thought that he wanted me to live. And I was just for him to use. I was letting him use me.
So at what point in time did you decide that, no, you don't want to do that no more? You want to be your own person? What age were you when you started to think like that?
I think, it's kind of, do you mean when I decided that I don't want him? When I decided that I didn't want him, or when I actually, started doing things about it?
Well, from what I read in your book, and
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing you saying, that up until 8 years old and around 10 years old, you were being the good girl to please and to keep the peace, and just to basically not to be seen. And so at what point in time did you feel that you do not want to do that no more, that you want to be your own person? At what age?
I was always feeling it a little bit, but when I really felt that was the only thought inside of me was when I was 8 years old, and I felt like I decided that I didn't want to see him ever again. I was scared of him, and I didn't want to deal with him anymore. Yeah.
At 8 years old?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said this to they were in divorce? They were going through divorce at that time? Your mother and father?
They divorced when I was 2 years old, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he still wanted to have visiting rights to you, but you did not want to do that?
When I was 8, yeah.
That happened at 8?
Well, it was, that was the last time I saw him, though. And then after that, when I went home, I was just, so many things had happened that I was just feeling and my mom could tell, and I could tell that this would be the last time that I would see him, and I wouldn't let anyone make me see him.
And then you had to petition the courts, and
Yeah.
the courts weren't going to cooperate with you
Yeah.
in that. So what was that experience like, of going through that for years?
For me, it was really disturbing to find out that, because I always had this kind of idealistic thought, because I've never seen real courts, maybe in movies or something, but I never really knew. I thought that we're in modern times, but it turns out when I was in the court that they don't respect kids as much as you would think that they do. And even my very own lawyers, sometimes I felt like they just, they would treat me like a kid, and I didn't feel like I was really representing myself.
Did you ever feel like you were, as I said at the beginning of the show here, that you were a product, that you were being spoken at or to, but nobody was really hearing you and
Yeah.
really wanting to know exactly what was going on with you?
Yeah, I feel like there would be times when I would tell the person I was talking, my lawyer, I would tell her something because I want her to express it in court, and then she would just kind of be like, okay, it's okay, calm down, everything's all right. And I was just thinking but I want to tell you these things, and I want you to be able to express them. And she would kind of shut them off, and I just felt no one but my mom and people.
Was there times where the court would allow you to speak?
Oh no, I never went to court.
Okay.
I don't think, yeah.
So other than that, there was the lawyers, there was the therapist, and basically in therapy they allowed you to speak, and that was what it was all about. So in therapy, when did you start therapy?
I started therapy immediately, or no, not immediately. I think about a year after.
What age?
Like 9.
Around 9 years old.
Yeah. There was like a year after the big incident happened with my father, and I decided that I never wanted to see him ever again. And then I kind of went through, like, it took a while for me to really get injured and for things to start showing, like, symptoms of, like, how depressed I was and how affected it made me. And so, like, and then I just, like, my mom told me about therapy, and I thought that that would really help me. And then I went to therapy, and it was, like, just such a beautiful experience, and I think it really helped me. Yeah.
So you got to talk about your experiences in therapy, and you got to process the feelings about it.
Yeah.
Of actually what was going underneath that wasn't maybe so obvious to you that was happening. You got to go deeper with feeling it and owning it at that time. And that took periods of years to do that, of course. Looking back for where you are today at 15 years old, and if you were to want to share with other teenagers, what would be the most important thing that you would want to say to them today if they're living through a similar experience where they're living with an alcoholic parent, or a person of one of the parents is doing drugs, or they have psychological problems? There's just something that is just completely not normal, and they are not contributing to the welfare of that child or that teenager. What would you say to that teenager?
I think in my title, I am my own person.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is mainly what I want to, that is exactly what I would say to those people. Just remember that you're always your own person, and you need to think for yourself. You need to express yourself, and only that way you can move forward. You need to accept things and kind of, just let them sink in, and just don't let anyone else control you or use you,
And how can a child or a teenager do that when they don't have the experience and they are with these challenging experiences around them? How would you say to do that? Where does the possibility of becoming self-reliant, where does that play into all of this?
I think just finding ways to think, just sit and think about things or express things, or just being honest. There's so many ways that you could find yourself in everyday things that you do, going about things. But it really depends on the person, so I can't really say that for someone.
So let's speak on what you were doing. When you say to find and being honest to yourself and to think about things, that sounds like you were doing a lot of contemplation, and you were able to do that during therapy. But for those who are not able to do therapy or don't have the opportunity and advantages to go into therapy, what should that teenager do?
Wait, if they can't go to therapy?
Right. What could they possibly do that they find themselves in a situation where it's not a good situation? A lot of children and teenagers, they'll run away from that home and they'll go to the streets and live.
Yeah.
So that's next to that. What could they possibly do within that situation?
I think the most important thing in that situation is to remember what is positive and what do they like, and then focus on going towards that, and instead of focusing on running away from bad things, to focus on, living with things that you love and, really paying attention to what your needs are and meeting them, if you can.
So, in essence, there's an acceptance of saying, yes, this is bad, but where is the good in this? What can I learn from this situation? What can I bring to understand from this situation, even though it's not good? And as you did, as I'm hearing from your book and read from your book, that you really said, no, I don't want this.
Yeah.
I do not want this person in my life. You were very adamant about it.
Yeah.
Others probably would say,
But,
no, I don't.
yeah.
I cannot do that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of time where I was not at all like that. I never thought for myself. And I think that now that I've been able to find that, now it's like I really love that now, and I really want to try to be myself more and more. And I really encourage that for me and for everyone else. Yeah.
And what is that experience like, to know that you are the ex-daughter of a father, that you do not want that person in your life, being that he's your biological father? Do you feel that you owe him, or do you not owe him?
I don't feel like I owe him at all. I feel like he was using me the whole time. And if anything, I feel like he owes me. And the whole time, like, I feel like it was just, I was being taken advantage of. So I don't think that there's anything wrong about what I'm doing. I think what I'm doing is really right, because this is like, everyone deserves to have freedom and deserves to live the way that they want to. And I don't think that I should let anyone take that away from me.
Where do you get this wisdom from, at being so young, and the strength to be able to speak the way you do?
Well, I think, again, it was like I used to be like such a weak person. And I knew that too. I was like, why? I'm so weak, I can never speak up for myself. So I've really grown from that. Mm-hmm. And it took a lot of hard work too. It took a lot of years to get where I am. So, yeah.
Well, would it be fair to say that perhaps you were not a weak person? Perhaps the situation rendered you weak, meaning that the relationship that you were having with your father, it was not a relationship that was nurturing you to bring out the best in you, so therefore you felt weak. But now, if you look back in hindsight, your identification with that is no longer necessary. You don't need to feel like you're weak, because you've always been totally strong. And
I mean, I guess weak is the wrong word, but I'm kind of comparing, like, for me it's weak compared to how I am now. But I mean, just the fact that I got through that experience, I didn't get mentally ill, I didn't go crazy, that's very strong.
And you weren't feeling that you had needed to abuse of yourself or anything because of that experience?
No, I loved myself the whole time. And I mean, I might not have, I think that the things that I did was because I was scared for myself. So the whole time I was always thinking about myself and trying to get through hard times.
Well, it also sounds like you had the beautiful love of your mother, and she was always there, and that's one thing that undeniably, without question, you could rely on. Yeah,
I think that's also the thing that brought me to realizing that my father's a horrible person for doing what he did to me. Well, he's not horrible, but comparing them is what kind of brought me to realizing that I don't want to be with him.
Right. So again, we might put the emphasis on the experiences that you went through, not what was done to you, but what you experienced. Let's speak about some of these experiences of the worst that happened to you during this time from age 5 to whatever, 13 years old or so. What were the bad experiences of the violence and the not so good experiences that you were going through?
Like, what were they? Or
yes.
Okay. Mostly my father would abuse other people, and I never really saw it directly, but he would have me, like, for example, he had this wife, Marcella, and he would abuse her, but he would have me take her son and take care of him while he was abusing her. So like, it was terrible for me because he always did something like that that would make me responsible. It would include me into what he was doing.
Well, and the including part was that it was said that it was done, of the violence, in the name of protecting you.
Yeah.
So it was almost like there was a manipulation going on there, that,
Yeah,
that there was experiences happening, and you thought they were revolving around you, and they were sort of said that it was because of you, for you, about you. But now looking back in hindsight, you know that it had nothing to do with you.
But I remember back then thinking to myself, I've done nothing wrong, but I could never shake that guilty feeling for some reason. So but I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong. I just felt bad, and he made me feel bad because these things were happening, and I cared about. Seeing someone get hurt and like that is just, I feel bad that I couldn't do anything to help them.
So did you form a lot of guilt around this, that you were feeling that you couldn't offer help, and from the mere experience that was happening?
Yeah. Yeah,
and what was that like?
For me, it was, it really made me kind of change the way I normally would, naturally be, and I felt really locked up and, caged, like I had no freedom. So it was really, it kept me from being myself.
So you mentioned that you would naturally be. How do you think you would naturally be according to the way you were acting and being at that time?
Yeah,
what would be a natural way to be if this wasn't happening to you? All the violence and all the chaos and all the fear that was going on for so many years around you.
It would be pretty much how I am now, and now I feel free. I can complain about really small things that happen to me, and I feel happy that I can be honest, and I can say things even if they're not that pleasant, and that part of just living, letting yourself live the way that, just the way you feel, and not faking anything.
So what I'm hearing you say is the main difference is that today you're able to have self-expression, where at that time you were living, that you felt that you needed to not speak at all. If you were there, if you felt like if your presence was there, you had to diminish yourself, to become less of who you were, to be in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that must be such an incredible amount of energy to go through, and very tiring to go through that. Henceforth, the depression started happening.
Yeah.
How long did the depression go on for, and where are you at today with that?
I think until I was, I still have a little bit now, but as of, but it's not that extreme. I feel like it's slowly starting to disappear as I go through, but there's a lot of things that I've learned from it, and now, before, I think, when I was about 13 and younger, I would kind of look at the negative things, but now I'm starting to find, out of all these bad things that happen, I'm starting to find that there's things that I have learned from those things that happened to me.
So in the dark moments, you were able to go deeper underneath them and allow them to reveal a lot of things that perhaps were hidden from you.
Yeah.
What would some of those things be? What is it?
For example, the fact that I disown my father as my father. I don't think that he is my father, even if he genetically is my father. But things like that it's just thinking for yourself and not letting other outside things confuse you.
So let's go back to some of the not so good experiences that you were going through. There was times where the police were involved, and you were witnessing that, and you were feeling for your safety. What were those experiences like? And what were they actually, and what age were you?
That was when I was 8 years old again, the same experience.
Okay.
And I felt the whole time that I felt like I just needed to get home to my mom, like, because out of everyone around me at that moment, no one was helping me. Even the police, they asked me questions like for 15 minutes, and when they were done, they just left. They didn't try to help me to get home, and then they left me like there. So
where did they leave you, the police?
They left me with my dad's friend who had a gun, and before the like, they knew that the police were going to come, and he said he had his gun, and he's like, you know, if the police try to do anything to your father, I'm going to kill them or whatever, you know. And
so the police didn't even contact your mother and wait for your mother, or take you to your mother?
We didn't have my mom's phone number, and I remember they asked me, but I still feel like they could have taken me away from that horrible situation. Yeah.
What year did this happen?
I'm not sure. I was 8 years old.
So you're 15 now, so this was like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And this was in what area, what state?
Like in Napa.
In Napa.
Yeah.
So what happened? You stayed with a friend, and then eventually...
And then my dad paid himself, or his parents paid him out of jail, because that's just the way.
Right. But what happened with you? You were left with a friend, so...
Yeah. I just went to bed, and then in the morning I just kind of stayed there. I ate breakfast. You know, things... I cried a lot, though, that night. I was just... Because I didn't blame the policemen. That was later. But in that moment, I was just feeling so, like... I was just so sad that... And I was so scared and sad at the same time. Like, I was scared of my father, and then I was sad that I couldn't be home and...
With your mother?
Yeah. And safe. I felt so unsafe.
Which that was perpetually going on for many years. You were feeling unsafe. There was
Yeah.
many incidents that were happening around you that caused you to be more fearful and uneasy, and the more that kept happening, the more you just kept retreating inside yourself, feeling that that was your only option. So recently, you had good news, and that's from the court.
Yeah.
And how long did it take for the courts to finally come to that determination that they were going to grant you, that you have the decision that you can see your parents? And tell me about that. I mean, is there a certain age that you can do that, and you have to be a certain age to be able to speak of that?
I think... No, I'm not sure, but... Yeah, I don't...
So when did that happen? Just in the last 2 years?
The court system?
Yes, that they granted that you were not able to see your father if you did not want to.
Yeah, that was about 2 years ago. Yeah.
2 years ago. And what did that feel like at that day?
It was so amazing. It was amazing, but at the same time, I didn't know how amazing it was. Then I just kind of sat there and I felt empty. I didn't feel anything. And later, as the weeks went by, I start to realize that, whoa, it actually happened. And it took me a long time to just swallow that and get over it and accept it. And when I finally did, it was just so, I felt so like amazing and happy. I felt like I could for once live the way I really wanted to live.
Well, let's entertain the thoughts that perhaps you could see your father at any point in time, whether it be now or in the present future or in the distant future. That you would be feeling so comfortable with yourself and so powerful and so at ease with yourself, and you've found yourself completely through growing up and as such. What would that be like And do you think that's ever possible, that
No,
could happen?
not at all. I never want to see him ever again, and I feel like that's just it. It's not, I don't have any curiosity to see him, to see how he's doing, and this man isn't connected to me in any way. This is why I don't accept him as part of my family. And to me, I don't even know him. He's like a stranger to me. It would be like seeing a stranger.
So what I'm hearing you say is you don't know him, you don't want to know him. There's no need now.
And I don't,
ever.
well, the thing is, I don't care about him in any way, so, yeah.
And the reason being that
Well,
you could not see him in your life ever again is that possibly because he's not contributed to your life, or he could not contribute to your life, or perhaps what about if he changed and became a different person and you heard that he was completely a very balanced, happy person now? And,
well, I'm not attached to him at all, and I think I would only feel that way if right now I wasn't completely honest with myself. And I think, I really don't feel connected to him at all. And even now, as I'm living my life, I totally forget about him. And, I forget that he even exists a lot of the time. So I've totally moved on. I am past him, so, I never think about him that much. So.
And when you do think about him, as we are speaking about him right now, what comes to your mind?
I think that, about him, or
about the
how
experiences, not necessarily him, your father, about the past experiences, about your past life from before, from being a child to your present time now. What do you think about it now? How is it different for you now?
I think right now, I think of it as a big accomplishment. I look back on that and think, wow, I really got through that, And when I look back on that, I feel really happy. And not happy that kind of happy that they happened to me, but I didn't enjoy those at all. But right now, what I got out of it, I really enjoy.
So, are you saying that you feel that you are empowered by it somehow, that you are a stronger person, and perhaps you needed those experiences to bring you to this person who you are today?
Yeah, it really inspires me to keep on growing and keep on moving on and forward.
Would you share with me your relationship with your mother?
Yeah.
What is that like? And what has it been always like for you and your mother?
Yeah, during the whole court process, she was the only one who stood up for me. I didn't have a single voice. It was all her. Well, no, I had a voice through her, but she was the only one who spoke for me, and I would tell her so much, and she really fought for me, but she respected me. She didn't say, she didn't let her own emotions get in the way, and she did what a mother should do. She protected me.
Is your relationship, are you very affectionate with your mother?
Yeah.
Do you see her, that you could tell her anything, or do you feel that she's a mother and you shouldn't, there's a certain line that has to be drawn, or are you completely open with her?
I think when it comes to really small things, say if I stole some of the cookies, I wouldn't tell her, but if it's something big, I would have no problem telling her, so.
You have friends who are your age?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a number of them. Do you see any of these other friends who have similar relationships, that they have a parent that they tell you about these experiences, and you see the same thing or possibly similar that they are going through that you've gone through?
Yeah, I think other of my friends are quite different, just because they're different people, and I think everyone like there could be the exact same situation, but the story's always going to be different depending on who you are. So.
And they'll be handling it differently.
Yeah.
But you do see other ones that
Oh,
have
yeah.
a lot
I
of
see a lot
chaos and a lot of dysfunction and,
Yeah.
and a lot of situations that are not actually
There's
the
a
ideal
lot of-
situation of perfect.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I've talked to who have had rough experiences, and it's just amazing hearing everyone's story and getting, because I feel like sharing those experiences is kind of sharing yourself at the same time.
And do your friends tell you about these experiences and share it with you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you offer them advice, or do they confine in you where they tell you what they're doing that perhaps is not serving them the best?
I don't think, sometimes I tell them directly, but a lot of the times it's, I'll say something that's just supportive, and it'll give them like a little step or something. But I mean, I don't feel like I'm necessarily their supporter. I'm just someone who's there for them, and we're friends, so we all love each other, so yeah.
What are some of the things you would say in any given situations that they would be telling you? What would be supportive that you would tell them and share with them? Supporting words.
I think just things like to believe in themselves, and that they're all heroes, that they, you know, like when I hear something bad that's happened to them, I'm just like, wow, you're a superhero. You're so strong. You're amazing, you know, things like that.
So you're basically encouraging them and supporting them in the way that you're asking them to look at the good of the experience, even though it's maybe not such a good experience they're going through.
Yeah.
And how do they respond to you when you say that?
Some of them are kind of like, they kind of like, no way, you know, but I mean, I feel like, it's, what I'm saying is honest and what I really feel, so I think that, I hope that it kind of, that they accept it eventually, yeah.
Are there some that really divulge a lot of things to you that you just don't know what to do with it, where it's been going on for a long time and they feel completely so sad about it for so long, and you have no idea of what to say to them about that experience?
I've never really had that, but sometimes I've been wondering if maybe what I'm saying just sounds like complete nonsense or something, but I mean, sometimes that happens, but like usually I feel like I always have something to say.
But the main thing you're saying to them is showing them that you're there for them 100%, that you're there to support them and you're there not to judge them.
Or I'm just saying that I love them and I care about them. So as someone who, if you love someone, you know, saying that you love someone is saying so much about, you know, you care about them, you're there for them, and, you know, you're paying attention to them, you accept them, and it's just so many things.
Beautiful. So you've come to those ideas in how long? In the last recent years? Or did you always have a knowing of this?
Not at all. I think when I first got out of my experience, I was so closed off. I feel like I couldn't talk to anyone. I was a really shy girl, and I felt like no one understood me. Well, besides my therapist. That's why she was there for me. But I feel like it was really like about 3 years after the incident ended, and then I started seeing positive things.
So looking back in hindsight, if you did not have therapy, who do you think you would be today? Being 15 years old and being that you've been in therapy for the last 8 years. Let's say therapy had never been able to come to your
I
life?
I think I'd still be able to find my same place that I am. I just think it would take longer because I draw a lot and that helps me to express myself. I write, I do poetry, and yeah.
So through writing and journaling, it's about being in touch with yourself.
Yeah, I just think it would take kind of longer because it was on my own. I feel like for me it's, there's just something special about being with someone else and sharing something with someone else.
What has it been like of writing this book, and how long has it taken you to write it?
For me, the book has just been, sometimes it's been like annoying. I'm thinking, at first when I started out, it was really relieving and I was getting out my emotions, and then kind of halfway through I was thinking, I'm living a happy life. Why am I writing about this depressing stuff? You know, I just want to move on. And then I started to grow more mature and kind of think differently about it. And I've gone through so many phases, like back and forth, whether I like it or not. And I think I've been writing for it about a year, but I haven't been writing a whole bunch at a time. I just write a little bit of something every once in a while.
And what are you writing about? In chronologizing the story of what happened to you, and are you going underneath it, of expressing how it affected you?
Oh yeah, most of the story is, I only have like a brief, like one chapter of the incident that happened to me, and then most of everything else is my thoughts and the way I feel.
So let's go a little bit more into sharing with others who are living with a family that they don't want to be there, and they are teenagers, and they're just feeling that there's no possible answers for them. What would you say to them? The ultimate ideas of what you would like to share with them. They come to you and they say, listen, my life is just awful. You know, my parents are fighting all the time. I feel like they don't feed me. I just have to grab food on my own.
Yeah.
There's no conversations ever. They're basically working all the time, both of them. And then when they do come home and we're together, they're just fighting all the time and smashing up the furniture.
Yeah.
And there's just so much tension there.
Yeah.
And this has been going on for years and years. And now they're 15 years old also. What would you say to that child?
First thing, I would have them come to my house for a week or something and get away from that and kind of sane up, like be a little less affected, like be able to kind of recover a little bit, because once you've recovered, then you can think straight. And like other than that, like my message towards them, I would kind of, try to bring up positive things about their life, and think like things like, you feel so bad. That's because things like, since you're feeling so depressed, that must mean that you have a lot of care about things, and or if they're realizing that things are bad, or if they think that something bad's going to happen, then I'll bring like, oh, you must be really aware, and there's a lot of things you can do with that. You can go far.
So essentially you're saying is to own what they're going through, to own the experience.
Yeah.
And not only to see the bad of the experience, but to see possibly what they can learn about themselves more and use the bad for the good for themselves.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if they can't all come to your house, that may not be possible, but then they should find maybe a friend.
Yeah.
Or just another family member, or
find
somebody.
a way to get away if they can. Yeah.
To some place that they feel
safe,
neutral and safe.
Like I've had times where when I go into a nice environment, like I used to have just like breakdowns. I would just start crying because I was just like, this is so perfect. This is so happy, this atmosphere. Like, I can't believe it, because, like, I would just think, like, usually I'm just so, like down in the dumps. And just, like, feeling that, if you just feel it once, you know, you kind of get a little bit of hope, you know. Yeah.
So what would that feeling be like, being in this safe place? Let's talk about that more. It's safe, it's happy, it's a neutral place. What is it like?
I think that space is a space where this is where you get to grow. This is where you get to find yourself. And without, like, spaces like these, you're not able to move forward, improve, and, you know, do what you want. Because I know everyone has goals in life, and those goals are really hard to achieve if you don't have a nice place to be in.
Mm-hmm. And everybody simply just wants to be loved,
Yeah.
and to be seen, and to share love. Whatever kind of love.
Yeah.
Love is in many forms.
Yeah, everyone's searching for love, yeah.
Right. So if they're searching for love and they can't find it in that immediate surroundings, then there's this place somewhere that they could find it, maybe with a grandparent.
And I would tell them, just keep searching, you know, because a lot of times people they'll try once, it fails tremendously, and then they just stop and sit there. And I'd just say, you know, why are you sitting there? Do you want this or not? You know, because I don't believe you if you're just gonna, you know, cry, or, you know, because I'm gonna, like, turn it around and think that, let's try to show how much you want to change by working hard and moving forward.
What's your action that you're going to show up with?
Yeah, because for me, that's the ultimate way that you can show how much you want something.
And no matter how bad the situation is, there's always going to be hope, and never lose hope.
But, you know, if you're feeling sad, you know, or if you're feeling bad, you still have to let yourself feel terrible. And, you know, like, if I'm sad and I want to cry, and if I don't let myself, then I think, well, there's a problem there. You know, there's something wrong with me. So even though it's good to be positive, if you need to be negative, you need to be negative. Otherwise, you won't get your emotions out, and you need that. Otherwise, because those emotions will stay in you no matter how much you block them. And I've had this, for me, from holding, because when I was with my dad and I wasn't allowed to speak for myself, I held everything in, and now that's why I think I'm really emotional as a person, and, like, I easily am brought to tears. So I still have a lot of emotion and things to work over.
But it can be a very beautiful thing.
Yeah,
sensitivity.
I definitely embrace it. Yes.
Absolutely. So basically, it's feeling that you can express yourself, and feeling the good and the bad. And if it's bad, then don't resist it. Yeah. Own it, and allow yourself to embrace it.
Because part of being positive is loving even the bad things, finding good things about the bad things. And, I mean, if it's bad about someone else, then I would say you don't have to accept it. But if it's something bad about yourself, you can only work through it because that's yourself. You can't expect anyone else to help you through that. People can give you guides, but when it comes right down to it, you're the only one who can really have the power to change.
Well, we just have a few moments left,
Yeah.
and I would love you to share what you would think that would be very precious to you, that you would like to share with others that could help them. Yeah. I know you've imparted a lot of beautiful wisdom today, and I implore you to let's discover a little bit more of what you would like to leave. Let's speak to other teenagers right now.
Yeah.
What would you like to say to other teenagers? There's millions of teenagers all around the world that completely wish that they were not in that home environment, but they are. What can they do? And what can they possibly know that could happen for them about that situation? Working with themselves, what could they do?
I think they can just try to remember that they're very important and that they matter in the world, and just really be aware of your own existence. And like when I make someone happy, like I allow myself to really observe that and think, wow, that was nice on my job, you know? And so doing things like that, really paying attention to yourself, because you know, it's good to be selfish sometimes, because no one can say honestly that they're not selfish. Everyone has to be honest.
Well, Jacqueline, it's been an absolute pleasure and a delight. And thank you. Thank you very, very much. And I wish you all the very, very, very best of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And from the Art of Conscious Living, please do take care of yourselves and take care of others.